Good afternoon and welcome to Free West Media YouTube channel. Our topic for today is, are the media propping up South Africa's ANC? And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so and also click on the bell to get notifications. Now, on the other side of the connection is Nicole Barlow, a fellow South African author. And good afternoon, Nicole.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good, good. Not
Yes,
bad.
you've also been following what would one call it, the circus in Washington
Mm,
when Ramaphosa visited,
closely, very closely.
when there was a tete-a-tete between President Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, very interesting. I mean, it wasn't quite a Zelensky moment that I thought it might be, or that we were possibly hoping for. But it certainly was. It was not a good moment for South Africa. It certainly it shone us in a really, really bad light. So, and there's no getting away from that. The media can, how can I say, they can ice this however they please, or they can coat it in whatever sugar they like. But at the end of the day, we were exposed for being a crime-ridden, failed state. That's it. Notwithstanding any sort of accusations of genocide or white genocide, we are absolutely a monstrous, crime-ridden, failed state where we kill people daily. I mean, up to 80 people a day,
Well, yeah,
you know.
I'm kind of fond of telling people, I mean, at one time, I've been to Sweden a couple of times, which is
Yeah.
also, a country with huge immigration and all kinds of
Yeah.
problems. But as far as I know, there are about 45 murders per annum in Sweden, whereas, we've
Yeah.
got 80 per day. So,
Day per day. And it's like, and
imagine that,
it's like people shrug their shoulders. It's like, oh, whatever, sort of style. And I'm
Yes.
like, that is insane. People are like looking at us thinking, this is horrendous. How on earth do you make it through the day? You know?
Well, some of us
So,
don't
but we
make
do.
it through the day.
No, some of us don't.
Yeah, and most people have been attacked and robbed, and I'm fairly fortunate, but they did steal my laptop out of the boot of my car a year or two ago, which was a huge issue for me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
I
they've
mean, lots
stolen
of
my laptop loads of times. I
yeah,
mean, you
but
know.
lots of other people really get attacked at 4 o'clock in the morning with some guy, gang standing next to their beds, and they sort of lucky to escape alive. It's
Yeah.
just horrific. But
Well,
it's
I think, yeah, I just wanted to say is that I think the problem is that the mainstream media is the government's propaganda arm. So without the mainstream media, the government cannot push through its propaganda and push through its rhetoric. And that aligns with the fact that we've got corporates that are willing to prop up the government. So you've got everybody that should, in fact, be defending the citizens and should be standing up for the citizens of the country, instead, propping up a malevolent and degenerate government.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And it seems to me that, if you look back further, say how the ANC came to power in the early 1990s in South Africa, I mean, it was an out and out communist, Marxist, terrorist movement, but it was presented as something really benevolent, and
Yeah,
Nelson Mandela, the great man, and the peacemaker, and whatever. Um, and yeah, I mean, without the media propaganda, I mean, they would never have made it even remotely to South Africa. I think in the 80s there were certain polls that showed that only 5% of people in South Africa even knew about the ANC. I mean, there were the sort of terrorist
Yeah.
attacks, but people weren't really sure what it was all about. And then suddenly, as a result of all this media attention and support and so on, they took over the entire country and,
Well, that was
put
the
their own.
international community. The
Yes,
international community turned Nelson Mandela and the ANC into, well, they turned Nelson Mandela into a messiah, when in fact he had, there was no cause, or there was no justification to turn him into a messiah. And so I think that is certainly uh, part of what went wrong in South Africa. So
yes, but
I
it seems to me that despite the 30 years of misrule in the country, it hasn't made one dent in the media's obsession and what would you call it? This obsession with the ANC, and also their infatuation with this horrific, corrupt, and violent movement. The immediate thing that Reuters did after that meeting between Trump and Ramaphosa was they put out a report stating there were sort of five, what do they call it? There were five fact checks or whatever on
They love their
Trump.
fact checks,
Yes,
except the
yes.
fact that Reuters get it
Yeah,
wrong
among
all
the
the time with
claims
just about everything.
contradicted by the evidence. And then the first was there's genocide against white farmers. That, according to them, that's not correct. Then the second one is the government is expropriating land from white farmers. That's apparently not correct either. But we know that, I mean, there
But
have
we
been
have
about
expropriation
70.
without compensation. So
Yes.
how is it that you can turn around in one sentence and turn and say that the government is not taking land from white farmers, but they've just signed the law. They've just signed a law to state that they will take land from farmers. They will take all your property, not just land. They will take your cars. They will take your money. They will take any intellectual property you own. They will confiscate your business. I mean, it's just beyond me that the mainstream media can be so degenerate and so malicious in their intent that they won't even report in a balanced way. Turn around and say, okay, at the moment, there is no confiscation of property without compensation. However, the government has signed legislation stating that they will take your property. They cannot just only take your land, they can take your business, they can take your car, they can take anything.
Yeah, I mean, they'll
But
even
there's
take
no
the money
such
in your bank
balance. It's
account.
just yeah, they can take your savings, everything, your pension, they can steal the lot. But there's no balance anymore. It's because balance doesn't suit their narrative. Balance doesn't pay them. And this is the problem with the mainstream media now, is you can't sell newspapers and that. So you need to sell clickbait. And the only way you sell clickbait is by creating anger, or creating fear, or creating emotion over reporting. There's no profit for the mainstream media anymore in making sure that reporting is factual and or balanced. So you can say no farms have yet been taken based on expropriation. Never mind the fact that Retief Goosen said that one of his neighbors, if I'm not mistaken, during the White House meeting, said that one of his neighbors'
Well,
farms had been
well, no, it's
taken
actually
over,
their farm. Well, yeah. Are you saying that
or
the
part of their
neighbor's
farm had
farm?
been invaded.
Yes. And
So
his
part of their
parents
farm
had
had been
been
invaded.
attacked on their farm. Yes.
Yeah. But this is what gets me about the mainstream media as well, is they report ad infinitum about what is happening in Gaza. Look, what's happening in Gaza is horrific. Okay, so there's no question about that. the same mainstream media refuses to report on how horrific farm murders are. Nobody, not a single person can tell me that the barbarity that accompanies farm attacks and farm murders is part of normal crime. It's rubbish. It's absolute and utter rot. They are politically and racially motivated. And if when black farmers are attacked, there's a political motivation because they want what the other person's got, or they've been done in, or something like that. So if you are going to report on what is occurring in another country, on another continent, and expect empathy, you should be doing the same thing for your own citizens in your own country.
Yes, it struck me, this same Reuters report or, propaganda that I was referring to, it was translated into Afrikaans and, published just like that, in the mainstream network 24 website in South Africa, so these local reporters, they don't even write their own report on
Oh
this whole
no.
thing. I mean, they just took
I'm
over
sure
this
it's
Reuters
AI.
thing.
I'm sure
Yeah,
ChatGPT gets it now. Please write an article and
yeah.
debunk white genocide. Yay! And it just spews it out. I mean, I don't think the journalists actually write their own stuff anymore, because I look at what they write and I just think, you can't possibly print this. You can't possibly read through this and say, I'm happy to have this printed under my name. It's like, you know, I mean, I knew Ken Oesterbrook, who was killed. I mean, I didn't know him
The
well. Okay, it was
photographer.
fleeting. The photographer. I mean, these are the type of journalists that risk their lives to bring us the truth, to bring us what was actually happening in South Africa. Journalists now. I mean, God, they're busy painting their nails and having their hair done while they click on AI and say, please write an article for me. It's just insane. I mean, if I consider when I studied journalism, what a noble career it was. You went in, was it Woodward and Bernstein that uncovered Watergate? I mean, every single journalist, craved that sort of expose, that sort of thing, to be able to uncover something so significant that it would, make your career and be who you were. Now it's like, I want to vote the Mampara of the week. I mean, how childish and how intellectually castrated can you possibly be when you are a newspaper and you vote people as Mampara of the week? I'm like, oh my goodness, you are not even worthy of putting at the bottom of my birdcage so that my bird can poop on your paper, if it was printed anymore. And then you wonder why no newspapers are printed in South Africa anymore.
Yes, and then this, well, we've had 30 years of utter corruption, degradation, and decay in South Africa, but still Reuters and the rest of them, they support the ANC to the hilt. It's just
Mm,
amazing. It's like their own
because they
private
can't possibly.
propaganda arm. I, I,
Yeah.
I actually saw there was this afternoon, or today there was actually some kind of report on the Sunday Independent of sorts. Yeah, oh yes, it says Rupert riles SA with race crime remarks. So remember when Johan Rupert during the Trump meeting said that they had gang warfare on the Cape Flats.
Oh, yeah. Good heavens. Took on the
So
DA. Go,
yes,
Rupert.
yes, but
God.
now the Sunday Independent, which probably has about 10,000 readers, I don't know, because they've been bleeding.
All bots.
Yes, exactly. But it's still a printed newspaper, believe it or not. They are now making a racial thing of that by saying, well, he referred to crime on the Cape Flats and not crime, I don't know, in Constantia or something like that.
They do.
It's
I mean, on a situational basis, in situ basis, the Cape Flats is, I think, has got the highest crime rate. I mean, they're killing people left, right, and center. The police have been accused of selling the gangs guns so that they can gun one another down. I watch videos virtually on a daily basis of the gangs in the Cape Flats and in the coloured areas of the Western Cape. There's running gun battles in the street. People are diving over their walls to get out of the way of flying bullets. I mean, this is who we are. This is what South Africa is. How can you possibly mask that? There is no way to mask it anymore. South Africa's a mess. And we just, the sooner that we get to grips with it and say, yes, okay, it's a mess. Where do we go to from here? Instead of calling Trump a mampara. Oh, and then turning around saying, oh, but the photo of the Congo or something
oh
had nothing to do
yes,
with South
yeah.
Africa.
I
That's
saw
right.
that one. I mean, this was one of the five, you know,
Yeah, Reuters,
checks
fact
that
checks.
are from Reuters. But in actual
The
fact,
media has
the
to fact check.
article referred to three countries. It referred to the DRC, to Zimbabwe, and to South Africa.
Well, I
And
don't know anything about Zimbabwe.
coincidentally, the picture was, the illustration was from the Congo, but there was a whole write-up on
Yes,
South Africa as well,
exactly.
which
Yeah.
Reuters doesn't even refer to. I mean, it's just completely, it's so
But
biased
that's who
and
they
such
become.
bad, yeah, faith
Yeah, but
journalism.
that's the media has become. The media is not about balanced reporting anymore. It's about propaganda. And that's the thing, because underneath the photo of the Congo was a long story about South Africa. I think they even quoted Professor Franz Cronje, if I'm not mistaken, or Dr. Franz Cronje. They quoted him at
Yes.
length in the article, saying about tribalism and about murders and about the violence in South Africa and all the rest of it. Just for some reason happened to have a picture of the Congo. But of course, Yusuf Abramji and all the rest of it, all these, hideous journalists and stuff like that who have no credibility any longer, except within their own sort of network of mainstream media journalists, didn't even bother to read the article. We turned around and said to him, did you actually read the article under the photo? No. So I'm thinking, how can you possibly, with all sort of merit, turn around and say that that's wrong? And I mean, and I think they said the one family that he showed hadn't been murdered. They went over and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter. The fact is, oh, and the crosses, of course. The crosses weren't the grave sites, they weren't the
Yeah.
grave sites. Well, actually, they just represented every single farmer that has been tortured and butchered in this country. But you are worried about semantics. Oh, it wasn't the actual grave site. I mean, okay, so not every single farmer was actually buried there, but not one of you thought to step back and go, oh my God, that's the country that I live in. That's the country that there are 5,500 crosses that represent people that have been butchered and murdered in this country because of who they are, because they're Boers. It's like that didn't even cross their mind. The only thing they focused on was debunking what Trump said, because it's Trump derangement syndrome. It's like we hate Trump, so therefore everything he says is wrong. And we hate white people. And I think that came across really well over all of this, is that we hate Trump and we hate white people. And that's it. And that's the sum total of our mainstream media now.
Yes, I tend to agree with you there. And yeah, all this talk of yeah, well, I mean, I see quite a few of the American commentators are actually now using this term white genocide, which might not be that far off the mark, because, it's not only about the extent of the killings in South Africa, or the actual absolute number, but if you see all the discrimination and,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
it is a kind of, if you look at the definition of genocide, and somebody, a friend of mine, also said genocide is a process. It's not an
Of
event.
course, it's a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. I mean,
And
I was honest.
and therefore it is something of that order is happening. And well, the other joke I found in that report was when they were talking about oh yes, three South African courts decided that the song sung by Julius Malema wasn't a call to genocide. It was just a protest song or something like that. So those courts, well, it also led me, they
Malema's
are
on the
the
Judicial Commission.
yeah
Malema is the person who decides what judges we get. Obviously, he's deciding on judges that are going to prop up the malevolence, the degeneracy, the genocide that's happening in this country. Obviously, I mean, come on. I mean, it stands to reason that these judges are going to be the type of people. I did read an article once where they turned around and said that to become a judge in South Africa now, you have to acknowledge that expropriation without compensation is acceptable, and all this sort of thing. That you have to be in agreement with all these laws and stuff like. And only that way do you get onto the bench. Our judiciary is a joke. You
yeah. It's I
cannot
mean
take our
the
judiciary
courts have
seriously.
turned into kangaroo courts.
They have, yeah,
It's absolutely shocking.
yeah.
Because
Only slightly worse than the British courts, by the way. Bunch of woke leftards. So yeah.
yes. So, but the other paradox about the courts that struck me was that, now, oh yes, and now Reuters says that the courts have said it. This is this song "Kill a Boer" and so on, and "Shoot the Boer" and all that stuff. That's fine, but now I saw that Peter de Toey, one of these libtards or leftards at News 24, he said
Mm,
that "Kill the Boer" must go. So it's no
yeah.
longer, in South Africa's interest to have this song broadcast globally as a yes, as almost our national anthem or something like that. Um, but uh, but the thing is that they won't be able to stop it now because these three
Yeah,
courts,
he's
the Gauteng High Court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the Supreme whatever, the Constitutional Court, they've all ruled in favor of this
mm,
song. So, in actual
yeah,
fact, Parliament cannot go against the Constitutional Court ruling. If they made a law now tomorrow banning, the singing of "Kill the Boer," um, the Constitutional Court would just tell them that, you've got to change the
mm,
law back to what it
yeah,
was because we have decided
exactly.
that
That
the
it's
song
okay.
is acceptable. Yes, and
Yeah,
it's like
but I mean, replace the
we
word
abolished
"were."
that court abolished the death penalty and
Yeah,
instituted same-sex marriage. I think we were sort of the fifth country in the world to institute same-sex marriage without
yeah.
any referendum, without taking public opinion into account, nothing like
Count.
that.
No.
So in
Oh,
this case,
since
it's
when
the
has this
same.
country ever been worried about public opinion? But replace that with any word, like Ronaldo Host said. Replace it with black. Replace it with the K word. Replace it with replace it with a Jew.
Mm.
Let's kill the Jew. And I mean, the world would be up in arms. This is like anti-Semitism and all the rest of it. But what's happening is that it's acceptable to be it white hatred is acceptable. And that's the point of this, that if you had to put any other word in that song, any other race, be it Mexican, be it Chinese, be it Jew, whatever the case may be, the whole world and the mainstream media would be up in arms. But the reason why they're not up in arms and the reason why they're excusing it is because white hatred is fashionable. It is now become perfectly accepted to hate white people. And the mainstream media perpetuate that. Not one mainstream media, unless it's sort of more on the conservative side, be it Breitbart or something like that, has ever turned around and said that it is anti-white hatred. It's not, this is what the left does. But this is what it boils down to. And this is why his song has been accepted both locally, certainly locally, and now even you have your international mainstream media making excuses for a chant that calls for the killing of a specific set of people.
Yes, I've even, I want to bounce this idea off you. I've even thought, I wrote about 20 years ago, I wrote a novel about sort of set in Paris and so on during the 80s, when there was all this kind of anti-South African propaganda in the world. And somewhere along the
Well,
line,
Paris was the headquarters for the ANC.
well, yes, I mean, there were, well,
Then
the
London.
French Communist Party sort of
Yeah.
ran the whole thing. I
Mm.
mean,
And
well,
funded their office.
yes, and a friend of mine in the Netherlands is, he's actually written a thesis on how the Dutch government also funded the ANC, and in a way, the ANC were just what do you call it? They were extras in somebody else's movie.
Oh, of
And
course
in
they were.
fact,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
West is always going on about the Soviet Union and Stalin and all of that. But in actual fact, they were doing something very similar. And the Nazis being against the Jews and so on. But if you go back, what they did to South Africa and to us was very similar, and they are still
Yeah,
doing it. When
they
we
are.
had political power, they were doing it, and now that we're completely powerless, a powerless minority and discriminated against in our own country, they are still at it, and they are
Yeah.
still publishing this propaganda and hatred. And Malema is like their mascot. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
there
but
they are.
Malema
There's
is
Reuters.
controlled opposition.
Yeah,
And I keep saying this. And when Trump turned around and said, why hasn't he been arrested? I'm thinking to myself, he'll never be arrested. He is the controlled opposition. He is the person that says and does exactly what the ANC would love to say and do, not say and do because of their so-called public persona or their international persona. They still got to try and keep the veneer or the illusion that they are part of this rainbow nation, when in fact they're just a Marxist quasi-terrorist organization. But Malema is Ramaphosa's lapdog, always has been. And this is why you just get
well,
nobody
he
reporting on
came
this. I'm
out
thinking
of the
everybody can see it.
Well, he came
Well,
out
he
of
came out of the ANC,
the
yeah.
ANC. He was the youth
He was
leader.
funded. He
Yeah,
was funded by the ANC. The EFF
and
setup
in
was by the
fact,
same people who fund the ANC.
yes, and in fact, he started singing this song while he was the ANC youth leader, and further back,
Yes.
I think when was it, in about 2004 something, there was that other character called Peter Mokaba,
Peter Mokaba.
and he was
Yes.
also singing that song. And apparently Winnie Mandela was still alive at the time. She supported him in that.
Yeah, she
So
did.
it's
But
got a
this is
long
when
history and
she
connected to the
killed him.
ANC. And you could also see in the Oval Office that kind of Ramaphosa and some of the ANC ministers there on the couch, they were actually sort of grinning, or when they heard this,
Oh, of course they
they
were
don't give a
grinning
damn.
because they know. Well, it's not that they don't give a damn. They know that he is the ANC's controlled opposition. They support what he says. Why do you think Ramaphosa has never been willing to criticize or to distance himself? Oh, no, they're just a minority party. They're a minority party that is just part of the ANC. He was kicked out of the ANC on the understanding that he would form another party and he would still carry on singing the song. Come on, every single time something happens in South Africa, Ramaphosa picks up the phone and says to Julius, listen, you need to get out and go and sing Kill the Farmer and Kill the Boer so that we can create more racial tension and hatred in South Africa because I'm about to do something corrupt and awful in the ANC. It's all just a smokescreen. And this is why I hate the fact that people get involved in this because it is just purely a smokescreen. He is the controlled opposition. He's the person that stands up to create division so that the ANC can keep stealing and pillaging and destroying the country, while we're all watching Julius Malema singing Kill the Boer. And we're like, why? If we all ignored him and nobody reported on it, he would become irrelevant tomorrow. But the reason why he's relevant is because of the mainstream media. His entire relevance is not those people who vote for him, it's the people who write about him all the time, and it's the government that endorses him.
Yes,
And they can say what they like at the White House, but the ANC endorses Malema.
yes, I tend to agree with you. And also, I remember a few years ago, some other foreign correspondent actually wrote somewhere that that the South African media, or that Malema was the South African media's favorite person because they
He
report
is,
on
he remains
everything
so.
that he does. At one point, our Afrikaans cultural organization had all sorts of actions going about, the discrimination against Afrikaans in the government and in the courts and everywhere. And how the Pan South African Languages Board has actually failed as an institution and has become completely corrupt and ineffectual and so on. And, at one time I used to send out daily media releases, and none of them ever made it into the Afrikaans press or into the Afrikaans media. But everything that Mandela says, every media release by the EFF gets published on the front page of the
because your
mainstream
Afrikaans media is owned by the Afrikaner Broederbond. And it was the Afrikaner Broederbond that started apartheid, and it was the Afrikaner Broederbond that ended apartheid. They call themselves the Broederbond now, but they were still the Afrikaner Broederbond. And who is one of the biggest members of the Afrikaner Broederbond? Chris Becker owns Naspers. So all of your if you track down those people who own the press in South Africa, except of course some of it now has moved across to BE ownership and that sort of like Caxton and that sort of thing. But the Citizen has Malema on the front page regularly. But the Afrikaans press are owned by the Afrikaner Broederbond. And the Afrikaner Broederbond are the ones that partly got us into the situation we're in now. So you unfortunately have some of your fellow people to blame for the situation we're in now. But that's another topic for conversation.
Yeah, it's I think it's a bit more complicated than that because I don't think they are that powerful anymore. But there's a sort of a new grouping now that there was a picture published not so long ago of a group of people there who claimed to represent the Afrikaner people and so on. And I suppose you could make the same argument about that group of people at present who kind of seem to control everything, and they also get huge media attention in the Afrikaans media locally. Whereas, the other voices in Afrikaans get completely stifled and they don't report on very important issues and
but
movements and
conservative
so on.
voices will always be stifled. That's what you need to understand, is that even in the Afrikaans community, you've got a whole lot of Afrikaans commentators, Max du Preez, all of them,
Oh, yes,
who
of
are
course. I mean,
militantly
yes.
left, militantly. Peter du Toit, Adrian Basson,
And in fact,
all
there was
Afrikaans, militantly left.
and there was we're actually running out of time a bit, but there was actually there's somebody called Piet Kroukamp, he's absolutely
I hooked him
horrific. And he was on CBS or something like that. But it's kind of funny how all of these figures, they suddenly just emerge. Whenever something happens, they are suddenly there. And there's another farmer who's apparently a very rich farmer, but he also sucks up to the ANC. His name is Nick Serfontein. And suddenly they had an interview with him saying that he slept with his doors open and he has no fear in
That's
the
another
world.
one. You
Yeah.
got Rupert. I slept with my doors
Yeah.
open.
But
Yes,
yeah,
says the man with a multi-billion rand security system. I mean, how out of touch can you possibly be where nobody in this country can survive unless they are behind 8-foot walls with electric fencing, gates, dogs, CCTV locked up, firearms under their pillows. I mean, I know a farmer that goes to bed with a Kevlar vest on every night. He
wow.
wears his Kevlar vest to bed. I mean, he's so out of touch. But these are the billionaires, boys' clubs, and the media that actually run South Africa. Don't for one moment think the ANC runs South Africa.
Okay. Well, on that note, thanks for
They think they do.
the discussion, Nicole, and I look forward to our next talk. And good luck with everything that you're doing as well on your platforms.
Thanks,
So
Dan. You
until
too.
next time, goodbye. And to the viewers, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.